Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Learn English with Podcast. I'm Nikki, and I'm super excited because today we have a special co-host with us. Please welcome Christy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy, and I'm really happy to be here. This is my first time on the show, and I'm looking forward to talking about today's topic.
We're glad to have you, Christy. Today, we're going to talk about the best books to learn English. We know that reading books is a great way to improve your English, and there are so many to choose from. So, we're going to share our favorite books and some tips on how to use them to learn English.
Yes, and we'll also have some special guests who will share their stories and experiences with us. But first, Nikki, what's your favorite book for learning English?
That's a tough one. There are so many good ones, but I think my favorite is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. It's a sweet and simple story about friendship, and the language is perfect for beginners. When I first started reading it, I learned so many new words and phrases. Plus, it's a book that keeps you interested because the story is so touching.
Oh, Charlotte's Web is a wonderful book. It's a great choice for learning English. The story is easy to follow, and the characters are very relatable. For me, one of my favorite books is The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. It's a charming story about animals with lots of adventures. The language is simple, and the story is fun.
The Wind in the Willows is a classic. It's a beautiful book with simple language and great characters. Another book I recommend is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. It's a lovely story about a young girl named Anne, and the language is easy to understand for learners.
That's a great pick, Nikki. Anne of Green Gables is such a heartwarming story, and it's perfect for beginners. Another book I love is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. It's a bit whimsical and playful, and the language is straightforward enough for learners to enjoy.
Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is a fantastic book for learners. The story is imaginative and the vocabulary is manageable. Another tip for our listeners is to read books with lots of illustrations and simple sentences. It makes the learning process much more enjoyable.
Absolutely. And don't worry if you don't understand every word. The most important thing is to enjoy the story and keep practicing. You can always go back and look up words later. Using a picture dictionary can also be really helpful.
That's a fantastic tip, Christy. When you use a picture dictionary, you can see the word and a picture of what it means. It helps you remember better. I also recommend reading aloud. It helps with pronunciation and fluency.
Yes, reading aloud is great practice. And if you can, try to find a friend or a language partner to read with. You can take turns reading and help each other with difficult words. It makes learning more fun and social.
Great advice. And remember, reading should be fun. Choose books that interest you and keep you engaged. If you're not enjoying a book, it's okay to try a different one. The goal is to enjoy the learning process.
Absolutely. Learning English through books is a journey, and it's important to enjoy that journey. Speaking of journeys, we have some amazing guests today who will share their experiences with us. They'll tell us about their favorite books and how those books help them improve their English.
Yes, I can't wait to hear their stories. But before we bring in our first guest, let's recap what we've discussed so far. We talked about the importance of choosing interesting books, using picture dictionaries, reading aloud, and enjoying the learning process.
That's right. And we shared our favorite books, Charlotte's Web, The Wind in the Willows, Anne of Green Gables, and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. All are fantastic choices for English learners. Now, let's hear from our guests.
All right, let's welcome our first guest. He's an English teacher with years of experience helping students improve their language skills. Please welcome Brandon.
Hi, Nikki and Christy. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hi, Brandon. It's great to have you here. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Brandon, and I've been teaching English for over 10 years now. I love helping students find new ways to learn and enjoy the language. Today, I want to talk about a great book that I often recommend to my students.
That sounds fantastic, Brandon. What's the book you recommend?
One of my favorite books to recommend is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. It's a classic story that's not too difficult for learners. The language is clear and the story is engaging. It's about a young girl named Mary who discovers a hidden, neglected garden and brings it back to life. Along the way, she makes new friends and learns important lessons about friendship and healing.
The Secret Garden is a wonderful book. It has such a beautiful story. Why do you think it's a good choice for English learners?
Well, the vocabulary in The Secret Garden is not too complex, and the sentences are quite manageable for learners. The story itself is very engaging, which helps keep readers interested. Plus, the themes of growth and transformation are very relatable.
That sounds perfect. Do you have any tips for our listeners on how to better understand the book?
Absolutely. Here are a few tips. First, read slowly. Take your time with each chapter. Don't rush through the book. Try to understand each sentence and paragraph. Second, use context clues. If you come across a word you don't know, try to understand its meaning from the surrounding words and sentences. This can help you guess the meaning without having to look it up every time. Next, keep a vocabulary journal. Write down new words and their meanings. Try to use these words in your own sentences to reinforce your learning. Then, discuss with others. If possible, join a book club or find a reading partner. Discussing the book with others can help you understand different perspectives and clear up any confusion. And finally, watch the movie. After reading the book, you can watch a movie adaptation. It helps reinforce what you've read and improves comprehension through visual context.
Those are great tips, Brandon. I especially like the idea of keeping a vocabulary journal. It's a great way to track your progress and remember new words.
Yes, and discussing the book with others can make the reading experience more enjoyable and educational. Speaking of which, let's dive deeper into the story. Brandon, do you have any favorite parts of The Secret Garden that you think are particularly helpful for learners?
I do. One of my favorite parts is when Mary first discovers the garden. The descriptions are vivid but not too complicated. It's a great section to practice visualizing the text and learning new adjectives related to nature. Another part is when Mary meets Dickon, who teaches her about gardening. Their conversations are simple and full of useful vocabulary about plants and animals.
Those are fantastic examples. I can see how those parts would be very helpful. Do you have any other book recommendations for learners at a similar level?
Yes, I also recommend Heidi by Johanna Spyri. It's another classic with simple language and a heartwarming story. It's about a young girl who goes to live with her grandfather in the Swiss Alps and the adventures she has there.
Heidi is a lovely book. It's a great addition to our list. Thank you so much for your recommendations and tips, Brandon.
Yes. Thank you for joining us today, Brandon. Your insights were very helpful.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, listeners, let's recap what we've learned from Brandon. He recommended The Secret Garden as a great book for English learners and gave us some excellent tips. Read slowly, use context clues, keep a vocabulary journal, discuss with others, and watch the movie adaptation.
And remember the additional recommendation of Heidi. Both are fantastic choices for improving your English. Now, let's move on to our next guest.
Now, we're excited to introduce our next guest. She's a librarian with a wealth of knowledge about books and reading. Please welcome Julie.
Hi, Nikki and Christy. Thank you for having me on the show.
Hi, Julie. It's great to have you here. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'm Julie, and I've been a librarian for over 15 years. I love helping people find the right books to read, whether it's for enjoyment or learning. Today, I want to share some insights on books that are great for improving English.
That sounds fantastic, Julie. From your experience, what kinds of books are good for English learners?
Well, there are many great options out there, but one type of book I always recommend is graded readers. These are books specifically designed for language learners with simplified vocabulary and grammar that match different proficiency levels. They're perfect because they gradually increase in difficulty, which helps learners build confidence.
Graded readers are a wonderful resource. Do you have a specific book or series in mind that you recommend?
Yes, one of my favorite series is the Oxford Bookworms Library. They offer a wide range of stories, from classics to modern tales, all written at different levels. For beginners, I recommend starting with The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. It's a fun and engaging story with manageable language for learners.
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is a great choice. It's a classic story full of adventure. Why do you think it's a good book for learners?
The language in Tom Sawyer is simple enough for learners to understand, but it also introduces them to a lot of useful vocabulary. The story is entertaining, which keeps readers motivated to continue. Plus, the setting and characters are vividly described, making it easier to visualize and comprehend.
That's fantastic. Do you have any other recommendations for our listeners?
Definitely. Another book I often recommend is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. It's another classic with easy-to-understand language and a magical story that captivates readers of all ages. The Adventures of Peter, Wendy, and the Lost Boys are full of action and excitement, which makes it a great book for learning English.
Peter Pan is a timeless tale. Do you have any tips for our listeners on how to make the most out of reading these books?
Of course, here are a few tips. Set a reading schedule. Try to read a little bit every day. Consistency is key to improving your language skills. Summarize what you read. After each chapter, write a short summary in your own words. This helps with comprehension and retention. Listen to audiobooks. If you can find an audiobook version of the book, listen to it while reading along. This helps with pronunciation and understanding spoken English. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions about things you don't understand. You can join online forums or book clubs to discuss the book with others. And finally, enjoy the story. Remember, the most important thing is to enjoy what you're reading. When you enjoy the story, you're more likely to stick with it and learn more.
Those are excellent tips, Julie. I love the idea of summarizing what you read. It really helps reinforce what you've learned.
Yes, and listening to audiobooks can make a big difference in improving listening skills. Julie, do you have any other final recommendations for our listeners?
One more recommendation would be The Railway Children by Edith Nesbit. It's a charming story about 3 children who move to the countryside and have various adventures. The language is accessible, and the story is heartwarming.
The Railway Children is a lovely book. Thank you so much for your recommendations and tips, Julie. Before we wrap up, can you tell our listeners where they can find more resources?
Certainly, you can visit your local library, where librarians can help you find books suitable for your level. Many libraries also offer online resources and ebooks.
That's wonderful. Thank you for joining us today, Julie. Your insights were very helpful.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, listeners, let's recap what we've learned from Julie. She recommended The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Peter Pan, and The Railway Children as great books for English learners. She also shared some excellent tips: set a reading schedule, summarize what you read, listen to audiobooks, ask questions, and enjoy the story.
Remember to check out graded readers like the Oxford Bookworms Library. They're fantastic resources for learners at different levels. Now let's move on to our next guest.
Now, we're thrilled to introduce our final guest. He's an English coach who is passionate about helping learners improve their language skills through practical and engaging methods. Please give a warm welcome to James.
Hi, Nikki. Hi, Christy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely delighted to be here and share some tips and book recommendations with your listeners. Learning English through reading can be such an exciting and rewarding journey.
Hi, James. It's fantastic to have you here. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and why you're so passionate about teaching English?
Absolutely. I've been an English coach for over 8 years. My passion lies in seeing the incredible progress my students make and witnessing how learning English opens up a world of opportunities for them. I believe that language learning should be fun, engaging, and something you look forward to every day. Reading is a perfect way to achieve this because it combines entertainment with education.
That's amazing, James. Your enthusiasm is contagious. So from your experience, what kinds of books do you recommend for English learners?
One book I highly recommend is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This book is a phenomenal choice for English learners. It's written in a clear, simple language that's easy to understand, yet it's filled with deep, inspiring messages. The story follows a young shepherd named Santiago on his journey to find a hidden treasure. It's about following your dreams and listening to your heart. The universal themes and straightforward language make it a perfect pick for learners.
The Alchemist is such an inspiring book. Why do you think it's particularly effective for learners?
The Alchemist is effective because it's a journey of self-discovery that everyone can relate to. The language is poetic yet simple, making it accessible while also introducing learners to beautiful prose. The story is motivational and keeps readers engaged, which is crucial for language learning. Plus, the book is relatively short, so it's not too overwhelming for beginners.
That's a wonderful choice. Do you have any other recommendations?
Absolutely. Another fantastic book is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. This classic novel tells the story of an aging fisherman and his epic battle with a giant marlin. Hemingway's writing style is famous for its simplicity and clarity, making it ideal for English learners. The story is compelling and teaches valuable life lessons about perseverance and resilience.
The Old Man and the Sea is a classic. What other tips do you have for our listeners to help them get the most out of their reading experience?
I have plenty of tips. Here are a few to get you started. Read actively. Don't just passively read the words. Engage with the text by highlighting new words, making notes, and asking questions as you go along. Use a dictionary. Whenever you come across a word you don't know, look it up. This helps you build your vocabulary and understand the context better. Practice speaking. Read passages aloud to improve your pronunciation and fluency. If possible, discuss the book with friends or a language partner. Relate to your life. Try to connect the stories and characters to your own experiences. This makes the content more meaningful and easier to remember. Set goals. Set small, achievable goals for each reading session. For example, aim to read 1 chapter a day. This keeps you motivated and gives you a sense of accomplishment.
Those are excellent tips, James. I particularly like the idea of relating the stories to your own life. It makes the learning process more personal and engaging.
Yes, and practicing speaking is so important. Do you have any other book recommendations for learners at a similar level?
Definitely. I also recommend The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. This book is narrated by a young boy with autism, and the language is clear and straightforward. It's a mystery novel, which makes it exciting and keeps readers hooked. The unique perspective also provides a lot of insight and helps build empathy.
The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime is a fascinating book. Thank you so much for your recommendations and tips, James. Your enthusiasm is truly inspiring.
Thank you. I'm passionate about helping learners discover the joy of reading in English. Remember, it's not just about learning the language, but also about enjoying the journey and the stories along the way.
Thank you for joining us today, James. Your insights and enthusiasm were incredibly helpful.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here and share my love for English and reading with your audience.
All right, listeners, let's recap what we've learned from James. He recommended The Alchemist, The Old Man and the Sea, and The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime as great books for English learners. He also shared some excellent tips. Read actively, use a dictionary, practice speaking, relate to your life, and set goals.
Remember, the key is to engage with the text and enjoy the process. Reading should be a fun and rewarding journey. We hope these recommendations help you on your path to improving your English. Before we wrap up, let's recap what we've covered today.
Absolutely, Nikki. We've talked about great books like The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, and The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. Each of these books offers unique perspectives and accessible language that can really help in your English learning journey.
And we've had some fantastic insights from our guests. First, we spoke with a dedicated English teacher who gave us tips on how to choose books that are not only engaging but also educational. Then, our librarian shared her expertise on finding books that are perfect for improving language skills. Finally, James, our English coach, provided some motivational advice and great book recommendations.
It's been such a pleasure having these experts on the show. They've given us valuable tips on how to make the most out of our reading and some excellent book suggestions. Remember, reading is a powerful tool for learning English, and picking the right books can make the journey even more enjoyable.
That's right. As you dive into these books, Don't forget to apply the tips we discussed today. Read actively, use a dictionary, practice speaking, and connect the stories to your own life. These strategies will help you get the most out of your reading experience.
We hope you're feeling inspired and ready to pick up a new book. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast. That way, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll always have new tips and discussions to help with your English learning.
Also, if you found this episode helpful, please give us a like and share this podcast with your friends and fellow English learners. Your support helps us continue bringing you great content and useful advice.
And remember, practice makes perfect. Try to read a little bit every day, and don't be afraid to explore new books and genres. The more you read, the better your English will become.
Thank you for joining us on this journey today. We're excited to have you with us and can't wait for you to join us for our next episode.
Until then, keep practicing and keep reading. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye for now.
Bye.